the modern GW universe, from Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 to the modern GW universe, what everything is called now and what still exists. For a long time, Games Workshop games were easy to understand at a high level. Warhammer equals fantasy battles with swords, magic, and orcs. Warhammer 40,000 equals sci-fi battles in the far future with space marines and aliens. If you played 20 or 30 years ago, that mental model made perfect sense. But over the past decade, especially after 2015, Games Workshop reorganized, renamed, rebooted, and expanded its settings. The good news? Most of what you remember is still here. The bad news? The naming is more complicated. Let's break it down. 1. The big picture. 2 main universes. Still. Despite all the changes, Games Workshop still operates around 2 core universes. 1. Warhammer Fantasy Age of Sigmar. 2. Warhammer 40,000, still Warhammer 40,000. So yes, there are still 2 pillars, but one of them went through a dramatic transformation. 2. What happened to Warhammer Fantasy? Old name? Warhammer Fantasy Battle, often just called Warhammer. New name? Warhammer Age of Sigmar. What changed? Around 2015, Games Workshop ended the old Warhammer fantasy world in a storyline event called The End Times. The old world, feudal humans, classic elves, dwarfs, and so on, was destroyed. In its place, GW launched Age of Sigmar, AOS, a high fantasy mythic setting with multiple magical realms instead of one planet, bigger, more heroic characters, more exaggerated aesthetics, gods walking the battlefield, lightning-forged warriors, etc. Are the old factions gone? Some are gone, some evolved. Some returned under new names. Examples: Empire, Cities of Sigmar. Orcs and Goblins, Orcs, Gloomspite Gits. Chaos, still chaos, but expanded and refined. Britonia and Toon Kings, gone for a while. 3. The old world is coming back. Yes, really. Because many longtime players missed classic Warhammer Fantasy, Games Workshop announced, and has now launched, Warhammer The Old World. This is a separate game system set before the end times, designed for rank-and-file armies and older playstyles. So, if you played in the 1990s or early 2000s, the old world is essentially GW saying, "We hear you. Here it is again." Important note, Age of Sigmar still exists. The old world exists alongside it. They are different games, not replacements. 4. What about Warhammer 40,000? Good news, Warhammer 40,000 never went away. What changed? The timeline finally moved forward, after being frozen for decades. The rules were streamlined, then re-expanded, then streamlined again. New factions and sub-factions were introduced. But the setting is still grimdark sci-fi, the Imperium of Man, endless war. There is only war. Do Tyranids still exist? Absolutely. Yes, 100%. In fact, Tyranids are more important than ever. They've received major model updates. They are a central existential threat in the current storyline. If you remember Tyranids from Space Hulk or early 40K editions, they are still hive-minded, bioengineered, eating entire galaxies. They didn't get renamed. They didn't get rebooted. They just got bigger and meaner. 5. Are the factions from 30 years ago still around? Short answer, mostly yes, but sometimes under new branding. Examples in Warhammer 40,000. Space Marines, still Space Marines, now with Primaris. Chaos Space Marines, still here. Orcs, still Orcs. Eldar, now officially called Eldari. Dark Eldar, Drukhari. Imperial Guard, Astra Militarum. Squats, returned as Leagues of Votann. The renaming is often about trademark control, lore depth, unifying sub-factions under one umbrella, but mechanically and thematically, many armies play very similarly to how you remember them. 6. Why all the renaming? 3 main reasons. Intellectual property. Generic words like elf or dwarf are hard to trademark. Eldari and Fireslayers are not. Lore expansion. GW now treats its settings more like cinematic universes, with novels, video games, and TV projects. Multiple parallel games GW now runs. Mainline games, 40K, Age of Sigmar. Specialist games, Kill Team, Necromunda, Horus Heresy. Nostalgia games, The Old World. Clear naming helps keep those lines separate. 7. So, what should a returning player remember? If you last played 20 to 30 years ago, here's the key takeaway. Warhammer Fantasy split into Age of Sigmar and the Old World. Warhammer 40,000, still going strong. Tyranids, very much alive. Old factions, mostly still here, sometimes renamed, sometimes reimagined. Games Workshop now runs multiple overlapping systems, not just 2. The universe didn't disappear, it expanded. Final thought. If you're returning to the hobby, don't let the names intimidate you. Under the new branding are many of the same armies, themes, and conflicts you remember, just with modern rules, updated models, and a lot more lore. And yes, the galaxy is still on fire.